Welcome to the Astoria Film Festival Step and Repeat interviews. Today we speak with Matthew J. Kaplan, whose film, It's Time for Tea, is in our 2020 festival. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and your film?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Matthew J. Kaplan. My short film is It's Time for Tea. A big part of me making this film was because I wanted to make a film. I'm a writer first before a filmmaker. Been writing a lot, and if you or anyone else is a writer, you know it's nearly impossible to get people to read your work. It's maybe slightly easier to get people to watch a 10-minute film, not always, but a little easier. So my plan was, let me make a film, and hopefully that'll get my voice out there and give me the opportunity to meet people. So it was really my first film. I've worked with other people on films. I've made short comedy sketch videos on my iPhone, things like that. But this was the first time that I was sort of in control, responsible for it at the end of the day. Obviously, I had an amazing cast and crew with me, that it was all collaborative. But yeah, the idea was, let me make a film. It's Time for Tea was not only the right length for a 10-minute film, but I feel like it captures my brand and sort of the piece that I want to show to people. So that was sort of the motivation behind it.
And how did you get started writing?
I've always been writing, since a kid, been writing poetry and then short stories. I'm a musician as well, so I've always written lyrics for songs, things like that. So yeah, always been a writer. Always dreamed of writing screenplays, scripts, and stuff like that. Just didn't really have the background for it until I started taking improv and sketch classes years ago, and sort of falling into that world and understanding it a little more, and realizing sort of what the format is and how to get your ideas across best on the page.
And you don't have the background until you do it, right? Now you have the background.
I now have the background, yes, to do a short film. We'll see. If I were to do a feature, I'm sure I'd be completely horrified and frightened to do it, but you just do it.
And the film speaks a lot about grief and the mental illness that might accompany grief. Where did you kind of come up with that inspiration?
Well, I mean, there are certain things that were just things that I thought about. I think in general, grief is something that, at least in our culture, we don't really know how to deal with it. But understandably, it's very difficult. In this case, in this film, it was a child. Thankfully, I've never lost a child. I can't imagine the grief with that. So, I think, and, I've talked to people since, that there's no one way to deal with grief. And I'm sure if someone loses someone, they get all sorts of advice, but there's no good way to do it. Specifically with this film, actually, the beginnings of it came out of an improvised scene years back. A lot of the details were different, but out of it came a part about a parent that loses the child and starts playing with the child's toys. So that stuck with me. So at first I wrote a sketch about it. At the time I was working with a sketch group, and it didn't work with the show we were doing, but everyone was like, that's really cool. Maybe it's a short film, maybe it's a play. You should keep working on it. So sort of a combination of things that just coincidentally came out of the improvised scene, but also things that I think about a lot.
It seems a lot of the filmmakers I've talked to, it's kind of conversations in their heads that lead to these ideas. A lot of us, a lot of times I hear myself in these interviews and I say, oh, we've thought, and then I realize, oh, it's me talking to myself a lot is what the we in the we thought, it's that kind of what you're saying.
I think, at least for myself, the best stuff comes from those conversations I have with myself, sometimes for years, sometimes for months. Sometimes it's a whole bunch of different notes that I've put in my phone or my notebook. And then it comes together. I know there are other people that, like, all of a sudden in the middle of the night, inspiration hits and by daylight they have a whole screenplay or a novel or something like that. But I think for a lot of people, it's the best stuff, I'd say, or the stuff that feels closest to the creator's heart is often stuff that they've had those conversations with themselves for months or years.
What are you currently working on, or what new projects do you have in the
Yeah,
works?
so over the last few years, I've been working on a couple of TV series, as well as another feature, and some shorts. So at the beginning of this year, not knowing how this year would be, I had two major sort of goals. One was to finally teach myself how to play ukulele, which it's right over there, and I picked it up twice over the last 4 months. So that hasn't worked out. But the other part of it was sort of getting my marketing game together. For two of my series and a feature, I've put together pitch decks. So hopefully that will be useful at some point. And otherwise, just sort of trying to connect as much as I can during these times when so many of us are just spending our time at home by attending webinars or just doing research of managers and production companies and trying to reach out.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I don't think I have too much, but if you
How
might
can
have a question.
people find you? Like,
Oh, yeah,
promote,
sure.
promote?
So they can always go to my website, which is matthewjkaplan.com. Otherwise, I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Matthew J. Kaplan, or you can find the film directly, social media at It's Time for Tea Film.